Conservatory. The word conjures in our minds imagery of grand, manicured gardens in which the rich frolic and congregate, laughter and the tune of some European waltz echoing down the long marble hallways. Traditionally, conservatories are private horticultural displays of exquisite exotic, expensively imported from around the world, a delicate display of wealth. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines a conservatory as a building in which tender plants are protected and displayed, usually attached to and directly entered into from a dwelling. The conservatory is a direct descendant of the orangery, a greenhouse used to grow woody citrus plants and protect them from the winter, which was a feature of wealthy residents in the 17th to 19th century. Only the wealth could afford such expensive additions to their homes, so orangeries became a status symbol. The conservatory evolved from the orangery as an aesthetic display of influence rather than a working display.
So how did an overgrown tract of neglected farmland in Chester County, Pennsylvania, become the world-renowned conservatory that it is today? Originally, Longwood Gardens was a declining 780-acre farm, neglected by its owners. By the time that Pierre S. DuPont purchased the land in 1906, some logging companies had expressed interest in purchasing the lot to cut down the old-grown oak trees. DuPont purchased the land to protect the trees, which he felt were a living legacy. By 1914, further purchases by DuPont doubled the size of the property. Longwood Gardens was intended by DuPont to be a country gateway where he could entertain guests and enjoy the sight of old trees. Pierre DuPont personally oversaw the renovation of old farm buildings as well as the construction of what would be the conservatories. The new space was used for special gatherings of social elites. While the echoes of high society still ring in the halls of Longwood, the gardens have long since been opened to the public. People of all social classes are welcomed into the gardens with festivals, holiday-themed activities, and seasonal displays. Once a display of wealth, the conservatory at Longwood Gardens now serves as a place for education, recreation, and the arts. While the extravagance of the displays has not diminished over time, their accessibility has greatly increased. Entrance into the gardens is not free, but ticket prices are affordable and allow visitors to stay in the garden until closing.
Longwood Gardens takes pride in creating a sustainable habitat for its plants and wildlife. In their soil-to-sky management plan, Longwood discusses how they not only identify and protect areas in need of land management, but also work to identify and protect key natural resources in these places. In addition to land restoration, Longwood Gardens also adopted the practice of recycling and composting in the 1990s. Plant pots used are made out of peat, a biodegradable moss, and when plants are changed out to make room for new displays, they are composted and used for soil in the vast stretches of garden. Recycling and composting efforts taken by Longwood have drastically reduced the amount of waste sent to landfills. To put this in perspective, about 8,000 cubic yards of organic waste is processed each year for use as mulch and compost. Longwood Gardens also allows for a more in-depth educational experience with their internship programs. They have a summer internship program for undergraduates to learn about the high-scale production of plant material, planting bed design, and other related fields. They also have opportunities for graduate students to do horticultural research.
Every season, many of the plantings are radically changed in order to keep the public coming back as often as possible. The way they do this is by growing extraordinary plants, normally, and ordinary plants in extraordinary ways. In other words, plants are arranged and grown in all types of breathtaking patterns that many travel far and wide to enjoy. The most recent exhibit at Longwood is the Chrysanthemum Festival, where visitors can see dinner plate-sized chrysanthemums stretching taller than the average human. Patrons can also see the garden's famous thousand-bloom chrysanthemum trees and many more botanical wonders. Hosting a number of seasonal exhibits, like a Christmas at Longwood, Orchid Extravaganza, and Spring Bloom Festival, these galas allow the public to view and interact with plants they would otherwise never see.
The Longwood Gardens Conservatory is in many ways a historical palimpsest of how plants interact with human culture. In the past, historical displays were status symbols and were owned primarily by those who could afford to employ personal gardeners. Although this is still true today, our culture is changing. Now we are turning to plants and gardens not for the reasons of maintaining aesthetic social appearances, but rather for gardens to be functional, sustainable, enjoyable, and educational as well.